Hey everyone, welcome to today's Open Office Hours live session. I have Andrew Lima joining me, who's a lead developer at Paid Memberships Pro. Hey Andrew, how are you doing?
Hey Kim, good, thanks, and yourself?
Andrew's in South Africa, so this is like a after hours kind of late night session for him. So we
Spreading
appreciate
the
that you're
midnight
online.
oil.
Yeah. Anyway, today we're here. We're going to talk about debugging your WordPress site, looking at your site health, and all kinds of things that you need to do if you are developing a membership site or if you're starting to dabble in coding a little bit and building it yourself. These are going to be some helpful tips that you'll be able to use if you want to add custom code, tweak functionality, and are just feeling a little nervous about doing it and thinking you can, break your site and ruin everything. So Andrew's going to set you up to be successful. You ready to go, Andrew?
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
ready.
See y'all at
Let's
the
do
end.
this. Thanks, Kim. Cool. So welcome to this chat. I'm pretty excited to be doing this chat with everyone. I try to make it beginner friendly, so I'm not going to dive too deep into like actual coding side of things, but rather a bit of troubleshooting and debugging and what that means in WordPress and Paid Memberships Pro. To start off, what is debugging and like what is the difference between troubleshooting and debugging? So troubleshooting is the process of finding the cause of the problem, and debugging is the process of identifying and fixing the problem. I had to do a little bit of Googling there just to make sure I got my descriptions right there, because I was also a little bit confused where I was like, it's kind of the same thing, but it's actually not. So we're going to do a little bit of like troubleshooting. I'll give you some pointers on what to look out for and things like that. So some common WordPress issues that I've seen in the past is the white screen or the critical error. This is often caused by like a code error. I'll show you what that looks like on the screen. That's going to be part of a live demo that I'm going to be doing. You get server errors. Those are quite common, where it's like your server files or folders don't have the right permissions to like read, write, or access the folder. You got limited resources on some hosting providers. They might only let you execute PHP commands or scripts for about like 30 seconds. So if you're doing a large import and it doesn't run it automatically in batches, you're gonna run into some limitations there. Error establishing your database connection. So that's pretty self-explanatory. It's when WordPress cannot connect to your database. One that I've also seen in the past when I was doing agency work is getting stuck in maintenance mode. Excuse me. That's something that happens often. And then general PHP and JavaScript warnings or errors that come from plugins, themes, or even WordPress itself. The link to the slides are going to be available somewhere after this call, and I've added in some references so you can go and dig a bit for some documentation and things like that that will help you just get a better understanding of these types of issues and where to find help and things like that. So WordPress site health, this is something that has been introduced since WordPress 5.2. It gives you an overview of your site. So you, from a single screen, you can see like your server information, how much space you're using, what PHP version you're on, what plugins you have installed, themes, and some plugins also integrate with some custom information, and I'll show you a little bit about that in the demo. It's really great to get a quick overview and just find conflicting plugins, especially if you're working with WordPress on the day-to-day, or you're quite familiar with like the WordPress ecosystem and other plugins and integrations that for a fact will conflict with each other. And this is really useful to provide any company's support team with this type of information. The support person can, again, have a look at your entire site with single like screenshots or like the information that is on the clipboard, like when you copy and paste it. And it really does make support a little bit easier to have a full overview of what a WordPress site is running. The reason this is so important is every single WordPress site is different. You have full control of what you install, what PHP versions you use, what plugins you use, what custom code you use. So each support request that we get will have something different, and so often it's specific to the environment itself and the combination of plugins installed. So to get to site health, you can go to your WordPress dashboard, go to tools, choose the site health information, and then at the top, you're going to select the info option, and that will give you like an overview. There is an option to copy this to clipboard, and that is what you can share with a support team. So I'll go over that in the demo as well. So what is needed to debug? Generally, to debug even non-WordPress sites, you're going to need FTP or cPanel hosting access. Your hosting provider might not have something called cPanel, but they might have like a hosting panel where you manage your files that your web host allows you to upload, and your domains and things like that. So you could use that access to gain full edit access to your folders and file structures. Or if you're familiar with FTP, that's fine. If you're on a WordPress site, a WordPress admin account will be needed just so we can work through certain settings in the dashboard that is not available to subscribers or editors and things like that. If you're comfortable in working with like file structures, and even on a computer, if you follow a path on like you click on my computer, then you go to your C drive, then you go to like System32, things like that. If that doesn't scare you, then this will be okay. It's not too technical. You'll also need a text editor, so something like Notepad++ or VS Code or something similar. It just helps you highlight a bit of the code errors and things like that. To read debug information, you don't really need this. This is just to dig into the code a little bit, which I want to do some basic code with you. And then just internet access to Google your error that we find as we go along. That always helps me. I just copy and paste like the full error that I get, and there's a lot of stuff out there on the internet that helps you find out, what the problem is and what you can do to fix it. And you'll definitely just need some patience, because sometimes the errors are really tricky and frustrating. But I'm going to be doing a fairly straightforward error with everyone, so it's just to get your feet wet in this world of debugging and programming that seems so daunting and scary. All right, so we're going to move over to the demo. Let's see if I can do this. All right, cool. So first off, I've set up debug sites on local WP. So I'm not going to be doing the FTP side of things, but I'm going to be showing you the file structure on my local environment or on my Mac. And we're going to take it from there. So if things look a little bit different and you have to do a bit of like different navigations and things like that, that is up to your hosting provider and how they serve the files and things like that. But once we get into the actual WordPress installation folder, everything will be the same. The file structure and things like that are generally the same. So if you know where your WordPress sites is installed under what folder on your web host, that is perfect. You can follow along just fine. So this debug site is running the bare minimum. I've got PM Pro installed. I'm going to show you how I insert a custom gist. It's going to break the site, and then we're going to look at debugging logs and things like that to get it solved. So first, I want to chat about some the site health status. So site health, again, it gives you that information that will be available for your entire site. It's like a one-click view that you can just get all the information that you need. It also gives you some neat little improvements, and we can just go through that quickly so I can talk through it. So to get to site health, you can see there's a widget here on the screen that's available via WordPress, but for the sake of the demo, I'm going to go to Tools, scroll down to site health. Maybe let me just make this a little bit bigger so you can see. So you can see site health is busy loading and is trying to just determine if our site's okay or not. Don't be alarmed if you get a whole bunch of like security issues and things like that. These are just recommendations for improvements. It's not necessarily like your site's in bad mode, you're going to get hacked or anything like that. But it just gives you, again, these are just recommendations to benefit your site. One thing to note with these recommendations is plugins can sometimes use this area to give like a notice. So these bottom two security notices, the 301 HT access redirect is not enabled. That's from a plugin called Really Simple SSL, I think it's called. So it's not necessarily a security issue, because I understand like what's going on here and things like that. So you can just ignore them. You can see here some PHP modules are missing. The imagic is not installed, and then the intl is not installed. This does sound like gibberish, but if you actually just search PHP module imagic, that always gets me, you'll find some information about that, or click the helpful link just to help improve some of your performance on WordPress. So this is the first screen that just gives you the recommendations and improvements. It doesn't give you the snapshots of the entire installation or ecosystem of your website. This is just to say like, hey, we noticed a couple of things that aren't like totally correct or 100% right, but if you know what you're doing, you'll understand these issues very easily, and you'll either ignore them or take action. For example, it tells you like what to do. It's saying like, you have inactive themes, you should only have one theme. Personally, I like having two themes so I can switch between the two during my development cycle and things like that. So again, if the shoe fits, wear it. We don't have to worry about past tests. If you do want to see and just learn a little bit about like what it's looking for in WordPress and things like that, the past tests will give you a good indication of what's expected. And you might be, if you're running more than one site, you might be able to compare the two and see if there's any differences and try to figure out what's going on. So coming into support side of things with site health, if a company or our support team asks you for the site health information, you want to navigate to site health and then click on the little info at the top here. This is where it gives you the entire snapshot of your WordPress website. It takes you from WordPress to your database settings, to your server settings, and things like that, which I'll just quickly run through each of them to show you like the key features. So WordPress, this is a real neat one. It tells you like what version you're using, what language you're using. It gives you your URLs. More importantly, it tells you like your environment type. Can anyone register on the site? So this is pertaining to the default WordPress settings. Directory and sizes, again, this just tells you like how much disk space your website's using. So if you have a large media library, you'll probably see your upload directory size be a couple of gigs, or I don't know, terabytes if you have a lot of images and videos. We can get a little bit of information about what theme we're using at the moment, who's the author, things like that. Inactive themes are inactive themes. Active plugins, you can see here's the plugins that I've installed at the moment. Media handling, this isn't too concerning, but you can just take a quick glance at that. Server is pretty important. It tells you, like what web server type you're running. So I'm on Apache. I'm running PHP 8. Then you can get like your memory limits and things like that. And if you're familiar with running into like memory shortages and timeouts and things like that, like the PHP time limits, you'll be familiar with these values and changing them and things like that. So it just gives you a quick overview of, what's your server architecture, if you want to call it that. Database, again, is just, versions and things like that. What's the table prefix? Just the general information that a support person or developer might need just to understand, what's running under the hood, if you can call it that. So constants, WordPress constants, we're going to be diving into some of these constants to debug our site just now. And yeah, so this is just constants that you can set in WordPress. You can just Google like WordPress constants to get a understanding of what each one does and things like that. The most important one on this video, I would say, is not the file system permissions, but that's just to say like your access to your directories are okay. But the most important one is Paid Memberships Pro, specifically for my team. We look at this data every single day. Every single ticket that provides us this information with, we go over. This helps us identify issues on sites almost immediately if we can. So it tells us, are crons running, what payment gateway the site's using, how many orders there are sessions active. We get membership level settings. So if you have 10 levels, it'll show up here with, the billing amount, the cycle amount, the expiration dates, and things like that. We can see if there's a custom template. So a very popular way to customize PM Pro from a theme perspective is to create custom page templates. And that tells us like, hey, the site's running a custom page template. So if you're having a problem with checkout, we most likely know where this problem's coming from without actually logging into your site and looking around and, wasting everyone's time. So it gives us links to where your pages are set, and then if there's any conflicts. So you can imagine being on the receiving end of doing support and helping customers and users with this information. We can immediately detect the more common issues of, memberships aren't expiring on time, or they're not expiring at all, or, their level page was set up incorrectly. It's not whatever, it's not allowing me to select the levels, not allowing me to cancel. We can immediately detect these things just to make it a lot quicker to resolve issues and just improve the customer experience. So if you want to check it out and you're running Paid Memberships Pro, just navigate to Site Health. At the top, you're going to select the info button and scroll all the way down. Now, to copy it, you just go to the very top. I'm going to scroll all the way. Sorry about that. You're going to click copy site info to clipboard, and then you can just paste it in your ticket when you create a ticket. And that will give us all these sections on this accordion. It kind of dumps it out in a single view of what that data will look like. I can actually bring that up real quick. Sorry, let's just bring my VS Code. I'm just going to zoom in a bit. So if I paste that in, you can see this is kind of like the raw data that we all get whenever you submit your site health information via the clipboard method. So again, immediately we can see if there's any obvious problems with the WordPress website. So it's super helpful. I'm not going to save that. So now that's the gist of site health information and what you can do. If there's any questions, again, just leave a comment in the chat and we can always circle back and I can do another, deep dive or demo this a little bit further on things like that. So again, just to cover this page, this is not the status that we need when creating a support ticket saying like everything's good, your site health is good, or there's problems. We're actually looking for the info tab. It's the more detailed information that we require when debugging a site. So for this demo, I'm going to move over to debugging. I'm going to show you how I add a custom gist to my site, which is going to break the site. I'll try break the site in like 2 or 3 ways, and then we can debug the all the issues. So first off, I like to do a custom plugin. It just gives me a bit more control. It's my personal preference. If you've used PM Pro for a while, you'll know that we need, or not that we need, but you'll be able to use a custom plugin, or you'll be able to use a code snippets WordPress.org plugin. I know it gets a bit confusing when I say in a plugin and this plugin, but there's many ways to apply code to your WordPress site, not just for Paid Memberships Pro. This is my preferred method just because I can use my text editor, as I mentioned earlier, to work in the code and to navigate a little bit easier. And the nice thing with text editors is it gives you code errors as well. So it'll, if your text editor is smart enough, it will give you an underline of saying like, hey, there's a problem in the code and things like that. The objective of this demo is not to dive too deep into code. I don't expect anyone to fully understand the code that I'm going to be demoing at the moment. It's just, if you work with PM Pro, there's a lot of customizations you can do with code snippets and little tweaks like that. So I created this snippet earlier today. What it does is it creates a little shortcode that you can insert onto a page or post or wherever you really need it. It will create a list of membership level names that the current user has. So it will loop through all their levels and it'll create like a bullet points of, I've got free level, I've got VIP, I've got bronze, whatever your level names are. it will show that. And if they're not a member, it will show, hey, you're not a member. Here's a link to sign up for a membership level. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy all of this. So I'm going to hit Command C. I just want to open my code. I'll bring that on the screen now. So on local WP, I wonder if I can zoom in on this. I don't think I can, so I'm going to try my best to make it as big as possible, but I don't think I can. No, I can't. So as I mentioned, each site has its own hosting panel. So yours is going to look different. Again, this is just because I'm running on Mac. So I'm working in my paths on my own computer. If you're using FTP, it's going to be a very similar view. Obviously, it'll just change a bit depending on the app you're using, but the concept is the same. So if you log into FTP, you'll just have to navigate to where your WordPress is installed. So it might be under like HTML, www, public_HTML, a subfolder, whatever it is. You just got to navigate to it until you get something that looks like this. I know my screen is a bit small. I'm really sorry. I thought I could increase the size of the stuff, but I couldn't. So anyway, the plugin is under WP Content Plugins. We're going to navigate to PM Pro Custom, which has all my scripts. I'm just going to double click to open it. So here's my plugin. It loads a custom JavaScript file that just, on page load, it pops up and it says hello. And that's not working for a reason because I'm going to be debugging that as well with you. But yeah, so we're going to insert the code snippet. I'm just going to paste it in. And you can see that it's pasted in, and I'm just going to save it. I'm going to Command S or Control S if you're on Windows. I'm going to keep this tab open and go back to my site. And then I'm going to show you how to, I think it's still going to throw an error on the front end if I load the page. So what I'm going to do is let's go to the front site. And as you can see, I get this big warning of like, my site is down, no one can access the site and things like that. So this is quite daunting. I know it's big, scary, and orange and things like that. So by default, I haven't even enabled debugging on WordPress, but since it hits a critical error on my site, it's displayed this because by default, it shows these messages. I guess depending on your web host and how WordPress is installed. So immediately on this screen, I've got all the information I can need to debug this problem right now. And then I'll show you how to hide these errors and make it a bit more of a discreet way to, you don't want your customers seeing this at the end of the day. So you just got to read the error. If you don't know the error, you can even just try to copy it in and then paste it in, and you might get a similar answer. It's not exactly the same. So it says, warning, fatal error, cannot redeclare my PM Pro, my level shortcode. Previously declared in, here's the path here, which is my local environment. Yours will say, www, maybe your website URL, whatever path it's installed, public, WP content, plugins, PM Pro custom. So that's the custom plugin I just opened and pasted it in, :17. So this is saying like, hey, I've noticed there's already a function called my PM Pro, my level shortcode, which was declared on PM Pro custom plugin on line 17. So just to go back to my editor, that line 17 on your text editor, if you see on the left-hand side of the screen, you can literally count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and go all the way down to line 17. So you can see 16, 17. So the lines sometimes get a little bit out by like 1 or 2, but you can kind of see like, hey, here's the function, my PM Pro, my level shortcode. So that's just to show you which saying like line level 17 where the issue is. And if we go back, it's this way. If we go back, it says in, so it cannot redeclare it, because it's in, okay, the path again, local sites debug. What you're looking for is the WP content, themes 2022, functions on line 70. So what I'm going to do is just bear with me with a small screen. I'm going to go to themes 2022, and it was functions.php. So I'm going to open this function. And again, it's overwhelming when you start debugging on your first thing, but once you do a couple, you'll get used to it. And I'll explain the issue in more detail, what it means. So we're going to go to line 70. Again, you're going to count the numbers on the left, scroll all the way down to line 70. And if I click on it there, you can see, oh, I've already added this to my site. This is actually quite a common issue where you might have, you might find just over, Google or on our site, and maybe they have the same function name. And they might do different things, or they might do the same thing. Maybe you're just not aware that you pasted it in your functions.php, or you had another plugin, another custom plugin that a developer built, and they had this function in, and you found the function, and you didn't remember that it was there, and you added it in again. So the reason this is failing now, this error, if you head to Google, just cannot redeclare PHP error, there'll be hundreds of articles that come up with what the error is. So in PHP, you cannot have functions with the same name. So this is basically saying like, hey, I found my PM Pro, my level shortcode plugin twice on line 17 here in the custom plugin, the WP content plugins PM Pro custom plugin, and I found it in WP content themes 2022 functions.php on line 70. So to solve this issue, we have to remove one of the functions, especially since they do the same thing. If I wanted to resolve this error because it was two separate functions doing different things, but they were named the same, I can just rename the one function wherever it's called in that particular file or in this area. So for this example, I could just rename it to my PM Pro levels shortcode _1, and I'll rename the function here, which will resolve the issue. But just for the sake of this demo, I'm going to remove it completely. I'm going to reload the page. I'm going to go back this way. Let's reload the page. It's just taking some time. I got worried. I thought it wasn't going to work. And if I go to my levels, that's where I put the shortcode. You'll see like your awesome membership level, free. So that's the current level that I've got. And that's one PHP issue. So when we're debugging PHP and things like that, we'll use the debug that is provided by WordPress. There are ways to debug JavaScript and things like that. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a way to hide those error messages just so it's not client facing. Just so your customers don't get a shock. They'll rather just see a bit more of a discrete error message. So what we're going to do is we've got to go back to our web host control panel or FTP. What you need to do is edit your wp-config.php. This is where we set those WordPress constants. You don't want to edit like any of the other stuff that you don't need to. It's fine. You can just leave it for now unless you're having trouble with that. So WordPress generated this WP config file for me, and it already included the WP debug. So what I want to do is I'm going to turn on debugging. I'm going to hide the debugging big orange message. I'm going to rather log the message to a file that we can discreetly work on. And then we can actually read like a longer error message. And then I'll break the code again just so we can get a gist of it. So I'm going to turn on debugging. As I mentioned, WordPress will define some of these constants to be true by default, and that's why we were seeing the message. So I'm going to say WP_debug display. So that's that big orange message we saw. I'm going to set it to false. So we don't want to see it. We do want debugging on. And what we want to do is write it to the log file. You've got to love the autocomplete. So it's debug log true. So again, this is to say, okay, WordPress, I want to turn on PHP debugging. There's an issue with my site. the debug display is saying, hey, we don't want to display that big orange message in the browser. It's, it's a bit alarming and ugly, and it might make our customers run away for their life. And we want to log it to the default WP debug log. So we'll go through that now. And we just go to save the file. So we don't need the WP config right now, but I'm going to leave it open just because a hint, which you'll see in the slides later, is you don't want to leave WP debug on in a production environment on your live site. It's best to just turn it on when you need it, like, a customer reported an issue or something, or if your site fatal errors, it also emails you since WordPress 5.2. I didn't demo that because I'm not getting the emails on my local environment. But if you run into a fatal error, you should get an email like from your WordPress site saying like, hey, there was a fatal error, and it gives you like a bit of that error log so you know where the issue is coming from. And that's a way to determine if your site has gone down or it's running into an issue. So that's just a tip. You're going to turn it off when you don't need it on your live sites. If you're in a development environment or local environment, it's okay to leave on. I live with it on as we develop plugins and things like that, just to make sure we're not running into any errors. So yeah, I'm going to break the code now. I'll fix the code, and then we can look at the log file. Well, not particularly in that order. So that's enabled. We go back to the site. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to deactivate PM Pro, which should break the site. Sorry, plugins. I'm so used to going to the PM Pro dashboard. Deactivate. So it's not going to break the sites on the back end. It's going to break the sites on the front end. We're going to go back to that My Levels page where I created the levels page. And now you can see it doesn't give us a lot of information here now, but that's because we're logging the debug information instead of just displaying it on the screen. So this is all your customers or users will see on the site if you enable debug logging and you hide the debug display constants. All these constants in that, again, are available on WordPress. Like if you just Google like WordPress debugging, I've got links in the slides that will help you. We've got a doc on our own site that talks through these constants in greater detail and what to look out for and things like that. So now we're going to debug. So we put on debugging, and now we're going to go into my fake FTP or cPanel host. So where the debug log file is stored, again, it's in. I'm still in the WordPress installation folder. I'm going to go to WP content, and as you can see there's a debug log file. So if I open this, I'll zoom in now. I'm sure I can zoom in on this because that's really small. No. Okay, wait. I don't want to clear it. Let's open it in VS Code because that I can zoom in with. All right. Even more scary than the last. So this is a different error now. It's not, as you can see on the first line of this. No, there we go. on line 1 of this debug log, you can see it says fatal error. So this is still a fairly clean debug log. When you're working with a lot of plugins, a lot of code, and you hitting the error, each time it's going to write the same log to your file. So that's also a good reason to turn off debug logging on your live site. So if you have a lot of visitors, like if we had to load that page and refresh it 10 times, these 19, 20 lines are going to be pasted into the debug log times 10. And I kid you not, I've seen debug log files that are, excuse me, 2 to 3 gigabytes, just because debug logging was left on and it was catching warnings and like some errors from years ago. And, it really kills your hosting space. And it can also be a bit of a security issue if you leave it on, because people try guess where WordPress is installed and they try to just figure out your paths and your usernames for your cPanel host and things like that. So it's always good to turn it on when you have an issue, or if you notice an issue or a customer gives you an issue, tells you about the issue, work through the issue, and then turn it off, delete the log file, until next time. Or if you have a staging site, you can just leave it on and try to replicate the issue. So to fix this issue, again, understanding these issues just come with time, because I've been coding for a couple of years, and it's not the first time I'm facing these errors. So the best way to do is just Google or search for like just copy PHP fatal error, uncaught error, call to undefined function. Even paste the whole thing in. Search engines are smart enough to pull things out and extract what they need for the actual stuff you're searching for. So this error, uncaught error, call to undefined function, PM Pro get membership level. So as you can see, I'm only getting this error since I deactivated PM Pro, and that is because the function isn't defined, PM Pro. So PHP is like saying, okay, you're trying to tell me to run PM Pro get membership levels for user, but it doesn't exist. And that's because PM Pro is deactivated. But if you have a custom plugin and you're also writing custom functions, you might have misspelled the function name. Maybe that's, that could be a reason to an undefined function. So it just takes a little bit of time and searching, these error messages for undefined function, PHP fatal error. And there's hundreds of articles and Stack Overflows and Reddit and forums that will have information about this and people giving advice on where to go. So now the question is, this is all nice. It's one error in the log, which I will fix. But if your debug log is hundreds of lines, like say 1,000 lines, you're not going to know where to look. So the debug log categorizes it basically on a timestamp. So you can just scroll to the bottom if it's a really long one. Or what you can do is just search the contents of the log file for fatal error, and then just, again, we're looking at what path the error is coming from. So undefined function in this path. Okay, that's my installation folder. WP content plugins, PM Pro custom, PHP, line 17. And then the stack trace, you don't have to worry too much about this for like the easier debugging types of things. This kind of tells you like what was run before the issue occurred. So again, it tells you thrown in PHP on line 17. So since I've got the file open, I'm just going to go there, but you get the idea of, you'll go into FTP, you'll find this path of where the folder is installed. Because at the end of the day, a web server is basically a computer with folders, and they know what folder to serve and where. So it's very similar to local development. It's just a different interface. So I'm going to go to the custom plugin, and here's the function. This is a PM Pro built-in function that comes with paid memberships pro plugin. So this code is running on my page load, but PM Pro is not installed. So I'm just going to fix it real quick. So we can say if, function exists, Pro get membership levels. Oh, I better spell it right, otherwise it's not going to work. For user, make sure my brackets are right. 1, 2. If function, let's return. So this will just output PM Pro not installed. So this, again, I'm not going to dive too deep into like what this code means, but it's basically saying to PHP, please check that this function exists. If it doesn't, just rather show a message that PM Pro is not installed. So if I save this, I go back to my site and I refresh it, it should load. I always get nervous doing these things live. So you can see it just says a message like PM Pro is not installed. So now if I go back and I install PM Pro, plugins, activate, excuse me, my levels, you'll see the functionality is returned back. So that's kind of what developers and freelance developers, customizations, custom code snippets, whoever has written those solutions generally builds for those type of things. Like, we don't want people's sites to break if the PM Pro is deactivated for troubleshooting, or a add-on critical errors your site if PM Pro is disabled, or another plugin that we're building an integration with is not active. It kills your site. So that's just an insight on how developers prevent like critical errors for like little things of like, oh, my plugin's deactivated and things like that. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to show the debug log. So I'm going to clear it and save it just so we have a blank log. And so it'll still be there in the WP content folder. I'm going to refresh the page. Hopefully there's no more errors. Let's just open this with whatever. As you can see, it's still blank. So that means there's no more errors. My site is clear. There's no warnings. There's no errors. So I'm going to delete this log file because we don't need it now. I'm going to reopen the WP config. And what you can do is just set WP debug to false. You don't have to remove these other lines. The WP debug is like the main constant that controls turning it on and off. So it's okay to leave it in there. If you want to remove it, you can remove it. That's fine. We no longer need that. We no longer need, no, we do need this. We no longer need the functions. So I'm sure you're wondering now, I said, hey, there was supposed to be JavaScript on the page that does a little alert pop-up. And this is quite a common thing where JavaScript is breaking on the front end. So PHP runs like on the back end side of things, like as pages are loading from the database, and you submit a form, and then that form data gets inserted into a database that will be the PHP side, and then the JavaScript is like browser facing, client facing, so that will cause issues when it's like minified too much, like double minified, or it's expecting a specific way the JavaScript's supposed to be coded and it's minified, or it's like cached. And with JavaScript, when the error occurs, it's like a domino effect. So if we're loading my custom, I'm going to just tease on my custom JavaScript. So we loaded my custom JavaScript first. Anything that is JavaScript related that is tries to load after that is going to fail. So it's like a domino or waterfall effect, if you want to call it that. So anything that loads after that error is not going to work. And that causes quite a bit of problems with like payment gateways that, you try to do cool little JavaScript things where it's, if you click on a button, the text automatically updates and things like that. So to debug that, you're going to open your website in your browser. For Mac, it's I like using, so I need to see which one it is. I use function, and then it brings up like on my keys. It's just like on the touch bar, it will bring up F1 to F12. You're going to press function and then F12 to bring up the console. And if you're on Windows, it will be just F12 because Windows has F12 keys. So that's a shortcut for like Google Chrome. If you're using a different browser, it might be something else. And so you can see, I wonder if I can zoom this in. Yes, I can. That's awesome. So I open this. You might get a screen that says elements, and this is kind of to show you what elements you're on, but you always want to go to console. So if you suspect something that's not showing on like a button click, or if you click a checkbox and other fields aren't showing, or anything like that, that kind of happens in real time without, page loads, it's often JavaScript. So you're going to press F12 or function F12 on Mac. And then everything in red is errors, and everything in yellow, I believe you can just ignore it. It's not like it's just a warning. So it's not going to cause functionality issues. Now, this doesn't tell you much. It's like, oh, there's a missing bracket after an argument list. That's a bit foreign to you. what you got to do is on the right hand side here, you can see there's the test.js, and I'm hoping it's going to pop up because I was having issues with it. Usually if you hover on it, it gives you where it's from. Okay, so it's a bit small. So the jQuery migrate is there. Let's see if my script shows up. But basically it's already showing test.js line 2 is where the problem is. I just want to show you how I see that before I click into it. No, it's just not working now. But if you hover on it, it's supposed to show you a little pop-up like it did now, like that with the jQuery migrate. So you can see the jQuery migrate is wp includes /js /jQuery migrate.min. So that, again, that's giving you the path to where the folder is. And I really want my test.js to show, because I know where it is, but the problem is it's not showing. All right, but you'll get the idea. It's supposed to show up. My computer's just being weird. If you click on the test.js, why is it not loading? It's so weird. When you click through, it's supposed to take you through to the error. Oh, wait, there we go. Looked like it loaded right now. Yeah, there we go. So as you can see, it says the error is found on debug.local, which is my website address, WP content plugins, PM Pro custom / test.js version 1.0, line 2. If I click on it, it takes you straight to the code and underlines it. As I mentioned, code editors will underline that, and I'll show you what that looks like now. So this gives you an idea of what code is broken. Okay, so we got to go back to our FTP, go to plugins, PM Pro custom, test.js. No, sorry, I want to open it in code. I don't want to open it in browser. So as you can see, there's a little red squiggly line underneath the pink squiggly bracket, curly bracket, and it's saying like common expected. So again, as a programmer, you kind of know what to fix this. I just forgot to close the test.js, the alert function. Now that it's saved, and I go back, I just want to bring this down, and I refresh the site. It should pop up with like, hey, fix this code. Okay, wait, is it cached? Yep, it was cached. So it says, hey, welcome, fix this code. So that's that. Now the JavaScript is running. So with the debug log that I did previously, that was for PHP code. JavaScript code doesn't get written to that log. It's only like PHP errors and server errors, like fatal errors in the PHP side. For JavaScript issues, the best bet is to use console. I believe every browser has a console tab, and that will be what you use for JavaScript issues. You might see a couple. Again, if you have on the right-hand side here, it will tell you where it's coming from, what plugin or theme. So it gives you accuracy on where the issue is coming from, because as you can imagine, thousands of lines of code and plugins, it's quite difficult to guess where the issue is coming from. So that's two ways to debug PHP, and then a way to debug JavaScript and what effects it has. So I just want to go back to the and I'm losing my, sorry, it's late here. I'm going to go back to the slideshow now. I just want to make sure. So I've got so many tabs open. Cool. So next slide. So just to give a recap, the best thing is like, do not panic. I've had it where people were like, I've deleted the whole plugin. I've deleted WordPress and reinstalled it for like something as simple as what I was going through, like duplicate functions and things like that. Just, take a breath and, just relax, and, it's not the end of the world. You will get through it. And it's not a major problem that can't be fixed. Support's there to help you. If you know what you're doing with debugging and things like that, you'll be able to troubleshoot and fix a problem relatively quickly. A good thing to do is remember the last action you did before noticing the problem. We get a lot of reports where it's like, all of a sudden my site started doing this, and then as we start working back with the customers, like retrace the steps, it's like, oh, I installed this plugin and there was a conflict. And then we know, okay, check that. So just take a rough note of, did I recently activate a specific plugin? Did I recently activate a custom code snippet? Things like that. It's just good to take a mental note, like, oh, after updating this plugin, I started getting errors in it. So just be mindful with that. Write it down if that helps you take notes. To enable debug code, it's the best to do it in the WP config file. And then again, the debug log can be found inside the WP content folder. Error messages and warnings will be added to this file if configured or displayed in the browser. Again, I showed you on the first issue that was just displaying in the browser in that scary message, and then we changed it to write to the debug log in WordPress. Once you're done, turn off debugging and only turn it on when you need it. I cannot stress enough that I've seen plugin or WordPress sites fill up their server space with a debug log. Like out of space. You cannot upload a photo, you're out of space. And then I just added a reference link there on how to enable debugging on WordPress, which is available on paidmembershipspro.com. I think there's one more slide left. So preventing future issues. This is general issues for WordPress, not just Paid Memberships Pro. So just read your change logs. That's the best way to do it. We try to write change logs in like a human-friendly, easy to understand sentence of like what the fix is doing, what the update's doing, what the new feature is, things like that. We'll write blog posts and things like that. So you can just search for change logs and, read them in WordPress. They on the plugins update screen, you'll see like view change log, I think, or update log. So be sure just to take a glance over that and see if it's something that might break your sites if you're aware of what code your site's running. You'll want to create a staging or test environment. This is specifically for larger sites. I wouldn't recommend just what we call cowboy coding, any code snippet on a live site with like hundreds of thousands of views, because then again you stress and people are very quick to yell at you when your site is down. One note with a test or staging environment, specifically for an e-commerce one, is to scrub or scramble any of the live data like emails, payment tokens, subscription IDs, payment gateway API keys, and things like that. It's always good to just remove that from your sandbox environments or your staging environments, because if it's connected to the internet, it's most likely going to make those calls and cancel subscriptions and delete users and things like that. So just be aware of that. We do have docs on PM Pro how to avoid that and how to just be ready for that and how to correctly set up a staging site. Install products from a reputable source. Stay away from the nulled sites. I cannot stress that enough as well. Null sites are sites that are selling products that are downloaded and then malware is injected into them, and they're like selling plugins for like $3 that are like $300. So you're just asking for trouble there. Rather, reach out to the plugin developers or our team if you cannot afford PM Pro, and we'll try to get you hooked up with something or try to work out something for you. A good one is to keep products and WordPress up to date. I've seen a lot of issues where a plugin is, say, on version 2.3 and the current version is version 6, and people are running PHP 8 or PHP 5, and then they want to update, and then things break. So it's good to keep things up to date after you check your change logs. You can run auto updates in WordPress now. I seldomly do it. I like to just double check my things and cross my T's and dot my I's before I hit that update button, just to make sure everything's working correctly. And then, as I mentioned in the previous slide, just track your changes roughly. This does help work backwards and retrace your steps on what went wrong when, as it definitely helps. Then when in doubt, just ask for help. Our support team's amazing at, helping people with bugs and troubleshooting, and we've got a ton of guides on our site that will help you troubleshoot PM Pro if you ever run into an issue. And general WordPress issues, you can always reach out to wordpress.org. There's a community on there, or find a local meetup and just connect with people running WordPress. The more communities you join, or the more people in communities will most likely have faced the issue you faced or the error you faced. We had WordCamps and things like that, and you can always just come up and chat to us, and we'll be more than happy to chat debugging with you, or features and things like that. And then backups. This is super important. I have like 3 variations of backups, from on the WordPress side to the server side to my hosting environments, running it as well, to pushing it to like AWS. Backups can fail at any time, and it's always good just to cover yourself. And a backup can always restore if your site gets broken in such a way that we cannot revert it. It's always good just to have that copy on hand, especially for big updates. You can always just do a quick revert, and your customers or users will never know. And I believe that's it. I'm open to questions and answers.
Thank you so much, Andrew. That was great.
Thanks.
I'm going to bring this up quick since you were just talking about backups. We have a pretty good guide on our site that talks about a few ways to get a backup process in place, how to have redundant backups like Andrew was talking about. So check out that guide if you are considering setting that up or just unsure about what existing backup process you have in your site. So we do have a few questions. I'm going to start with this might bring Andrew back into the thick of it, but let's do it anyway.
Let's go. Let's try.
Ryan asked, relating to debugging email issues. So it looks like even though they've got mail logging set up, it's still hard to see what's going on because nothing's being logged. So I think email isn't even sending. So where would you start a debug process for emails?
Right. So the key thing there in your sentence is that there's no log at all. That indicates, as you mentioned, Kim, it's not sending. Like, it's dead not sending. It's not like an error of, your SMTP details are wrong or anything like that. I would reach out to your email provider, like their support. There should be server-side reports for your mail. Like, your server will have a copy. WP mail logging will have a copy when it is sending. And the support should be able to trace why that's happening. And then if you do have like a SMTP plugin, or you've tweaked SMTP email settings in WordPress, I would also have a look there first. That would be the starting point.
And Ryan, also just add, if you're still listening, I hope you are. If it's all email, nothing sending, that would be where I would start what Andrew said. If it's some email sending and some isn't, then that helps you understand better what files and plugins to look at, what could be the problem. So try to do a simple thing in the WordPress site, like a password reset. Try to create a user through the admin and have it send a notification to the user. Do something that really no plugin is touching, hopefully, in the WordPress site. Then I'll help you identify where kind of to start digging in deeper. I know with our site, if I'm having a problem with email debugging, just with Paid Memberships Pro emails, I would, open that email class and a bunch of places within it have it like logged to the debug. That wasn't something we showed, but when you're debugging code, you can actually send it information to see where you're getting along the process of the debugging. So just like Andrew showed that debug log file that WordPress creates, you can, in your custom code, send it data and say, hey, I got to point A, and just kind of wave hi to yourself. Right. And that kind of can help you go down the rabbit hole of where the bug comes through. Okay, it looks like Ryan said some is sending and some isn't. So yeah, create a ticket, and then we can kind of dig into why that could be happening down in the site. Okay, cool. This was a pre-submitted question. I don't know if Soraya is here, but I'm going to add this. Soraya asks, what is the simplest way to make sure that a PM Pro update is working and not breaking something else on my site? So an impossible question maybe, but Andrew, I'd love to hear your response here.
Yeah, it's always difficult. It comes down to the developers as well. We try our best to release updates that aren't going to break sites. We try to test it as thoroughly as possible. And that's why things will take a little bit longer to sometimes release from PM Pro side. We just want to make sure it's in the best possible position to release that update. But as a user or customer, what you can do is, again, read the change logs. We try to depict what's going on in that update. We write a blog post about it. And if you have a staging site, or even like what I did with local WP, you can always just install those plugins. You don't have to have a full one-to-one setup of your live sites. As long as the same plugins are installed, you can just run the updates, go through the settings, maybe test the checkout if it's a checkout plugin, or whatever plugin like features it offers, test those features, and then you're good to go to update on your live site.
Yeah, I love that you said that. I think a lot of people believe a staging site has to be an exact replica, has to be maintained, that we're really like installing things on staging and testing and then pushing them through some weird process behind the scenes. But in reality, it's just a sandbox, like you said, a playground for you. You can have it just locally on your site, put your same theme on it, put your same set of plugins on it. Don't worry about if the homepage looks like your exact homepage on your site or the blog posts are matched one-to-one. Just really use it to make sure you're not going to get a critical fatal error on the site by updating a plugin. So I love that. The next one okay. Here's a question from Greg relating to reading debug logs. They have a staging site and they just want to know, what are the best practices there? If you activate a plugin and then it starts printing to the log, is that what you would recommend to see if we're going to get a conflict, and just kind of what to be aware of, what to look for?
So I think it's good to activate the plugin on your staging sites, especially if it's a new plugin. What I also like to do is read the support requests if it's on .org, or read the reviews just to get a gauge of, or an idea of the plugin's health and how the company is handling that, or developers. But if you activate it and it starts pushing data out to the debug log, just take it slow, read through the log. If it's a warning, check out the most important is to check for fatal errors in the debug log. Warnings will still your product will still work if there's warnings. The warnings just to say like, hey, something's maybe deprecated, or something's not quite right, or something just needs changing, but it shouldn't cause functionality issues. So yeah, just check the logs for the fatal errors. You can think like Control F or Command F to search the file, and then just search for fatal errors and take it from there, and look at the path of where those fatal errors are coming from, and to see if it was that recently activated plugin.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. If it's a major release, that would be like Paid Memberships Pro just released 2.9.10. So our next major release will be 3.0. Same with WordPress. WordPress was 5.9.8, and then you get 6.0. And we're in that phase of things. So there's kind of tiers of possible breakage, and developers understand that with WordPress, that major releases are larger code base changes, functionality changes, maybe backwards compatibility changes. And then do we call it a minor release when it's like a 2.9 version, or is that?
Yeah, that's minor. And then if it's 3 digits, it's a point release.
A point release. So a point release is what we just did, 2.9.10. So point releases should have a smaller change log, should have less things that can potentially break. So I know like Easy Digital Downloads just came out with the version 3.0 like a year ago. Now time flies, but a lot of people just waited and watched the support that was coming through on .org, the reviews that were coming through on .org. And that can be also a way to tell you like, okay, is the general community upgrading and not seeing issues with this? So just little funky hacks, I guess.
Just to touch on that, personally, what I do on my personal sites, like if WordPress 6.0 comes out, I do not immediately upgrade. Any major release, I wait for like a 6.1. Because with any major release, there are going to be like some issues that come out. We cannot avoid that, unfortunately. There's so many, like I said, there's so many variations of WordPress sites out there, and so many combinations thereof. You just cannot cover everything, even from a WordPress perspective. So read the logs, see what changes there are. Spool up a little sandbox sites. There's a couple of online free services that you can install it instead of having the software on your computer. run the update, see what it does, see what it changes, and just test it before doing it on production. That's all I can say.
I'll throw in a Kim question here. Do you have a favorite way to roll back if you do an update and you are like, oh my goodness, why did I do this?
Right.
This was the worst mistake of my life.
So depending on what's been updated, so if it's WordPress.org, there's a plugin called, I think it's called WP Rollback. That's a great plugin to install. Once you install it, you set an option that allows rollbacks for any WordPress.org plugin. I think you go to the plugins page, and then there's a little link under the plugin that will say, next to like the settings, deletes, whatever those plugin meta links are called, it'll say rollback, and you can roll back to your previous version. If it's like a backwards compatibility break that you cannot roll back so easily because like databases have been updated and things like that, that's where backup comes in. There's some services that are fairly affordable, like managed WP backup daily is like $5 a month, maybe. I don't know what their pricing is, but it's quite cheap. And if you're running daily backups off site, you can just easily revert the entire backup. If you've updated like your entire site in 20 plugins, it might not be easy to roll back those.
All right, I'm scanning through to find any here that I want to pull up. We talked about email logging. Okay, cool. All right. All right, here's one from Chris and Sarah Bruckner. We're talking about staging sites, and they have one for Paid Memberships Pro for their membership site. It says their license expired, although the production site license is active. Should I worry about that?
No, you don't have to. So with Paid Memberships Pro, our license doesn't restrict any functionality. It only restricts dashboard updates and access to support. So as long as your license is active on your production site, that is fine. What you can always do is either toggle the licenses. I do that personally sometimes, or you can try activate it on your staging sites, depending on what plan you're on, because there's you get so many license activations depending on what plan you're on. If not, you can just toggle the site for automatic updates. I mean, that's how WordPress plugins work in the ecosystem. Or you can manually download and upload them directly in WordPress and then just override them.
Yeah,
so
and it could be something about that staging hosting environment that's blocking connections to our license server. So you could reach out by on the contact form. We've helped people add not a backdoor, I won't say, but just access, because the license key has to be looked up on our server. And I know some staging environments have a lot of protections in place, which should be the case, so that sites can't access them and they can't be accessed by other plugins. So it could just be a caveat of how your staging site is set up, and it's kind of a closed environment that isn't communicating with other sites out there. So that could be the case. Okay. We have Tony Pearl, who mentioned the most common error message they see. I haven't seen this one. A schedule event is late. The scheduled event action schedule run queue is late to run. The site works, but it could indicate that scheduling posts or automated updates may not work.
You're testing my WordPress knowledge here. So the action scheduler run event is part of, like, I believe, the cron system, and some plugins might add in like an action scheduler run queue. It's not necessarily stopping, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. But it's what handles, like, when you schedule a post for a future date and things like that. So if that cron job isn't running, it's not going to schedule your post. That's another thing with like WordPress cron jobs, is it relies on it being registered and set up correctly within the WordPress side. If your site has low traffic, it will also not kick off these cron jobs, because the site has to like load it. It kind of checks on like page views. And a good way to debug this would be a plugin called WP Control, which gives you a list of the WP crons. And if you just search like that error message that you sent in the chat, like on Google, you'll find, I'm sure, a few WordPress.org tickets and solutions to that. So hopefully the WP control will help you there.
I'll bring up this comment that Greg Robbins made, that they use Updraft for backups, and it's free to use. They use it on all their sites. So maybe I should have penned that into our article about backups, but just a way that it's creating that mirrored backup copy of your site. So you're going to have just one more place outside of your host that's saving a version. You know, if your host blows up and your site blows up and your other backup you downloaded last week backs up, you have all these places to show everything. All right. Andrew, do you want to go to sleep, or do you want to take a question that other people might drop off for, but we'll have it recorded on here? Okay. This is about testing PayPal. I don't know that this falls under site debugging, but in a way, gateway debugging is another topic entirely that we could cover.
Yeah.
But using your gateway in a developer in a test mode can help you learn some things out. So just kind of high level, I can also bring up the PayPal debugging site, kind of what you would do and where you would start there.
Cool. So first things first is debugging payment gateways. You have to do it on a staging site that is live if you are testing it on your staging site. Stuff like local WP, like I was working in, isn't going to work because PayPal cannot communicate to like a locally hosted website. There are ways around it, which I'm not going to go into, but there are ways to get it to communicate. But the main point is to test gateways on a web accessible URL. It can be like staging.yourdomain.com, and then you'd be able to test your gateways. With all the PM Pro gateways, we have an option to toggle between live and sandbox. It's a payment gateway environment, something like that. And once you change to sandbox, it doesn't accept like real money, real credit cards. You have to use specific cards. If you're using like Stripe or authorize.net, you can just Google like Stripe sandbox credit cards. That'll come up. We've got documentation around that. And another major key on that is you do not use your live credentials or your live PayPal address or your live Stripe API keys, or, well, if you're not using Stripe Connect, you have to use separate credentials. And most of the time it will be at like, I think it's sandbox.paypal.com or developers.paypal.com. Stripe has a little toggle box in the top right to switch between test mode and live mode. So it really depends on your gateway how to get that information and how to toggle between, you know, sandbox and live mode from the gateway's perspective. And then once you have credentials, you'll input that into PM Pro where your live credentials are or were, and you'll set it to sandbox mode, and then you can test without actually being charged like your membership checkouts or recurring payments and things like that. And then with sandbox payment gateways, like the sandbox functionality itself, just be aware that not all payment gateways will have full features. That's something we've struggled in the past, where Sandbox doesn't allow you to do recurring payments. It only allows you to do like one-time payments. So sometimes testing like these recurring payments and things like that just isn't possible in Sandbox. So a good way to do it is create yourself like a discount code to charge $1, and then set up like a daily recurring membership for $1. Let a day run past, make sure you get charged, make sure the order is created in PM Pro, and then cancel the subscription and refund yourself, or keep it in your own PayPal wallets or Stripe like wallet, if you want to call it that. I hope that covers it.
That was the shortest how to do development testing on Payment Gateway speech ever. I like it. I wish it was that easy. But cool. We appreciate it so much, Andrew, that you're being here this late in the evening for us. And we're going to get this video packaged up, cleaned up, and released in the major demo, and then some of the QAs we might also release separately. So this stream won't exist on YouTube, but a variation of it will publish after we make it all pretty. So thanks so much. Next week we're back, and it'll be me presenting. No, not next week, 2 weeks from now. We switched to every other week. So this will be February 9th. I'm going to show you how to take that membership account page and turn it into more of a member dashboard. So depending on your use case, if you're a course site, if you're a forums kind of site, if you are a blog and news site, we can turn that account page from just kind of transactional information to a real hub that helps people access that important transaction information, but also get access to all the things that you're providing that are valuable to their membership. So cool. I hope you can tune in then, and we will put you to bed, Andrew. And thanks so much for watching, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Kim. Bye.